I sat there, across from him, still wearing the same gray shirt I wore my first week on the job. Funny how some things circle back like that. The fabric had faded around the collar, sleeves soft from 2 decades of wash cycles, but it still fit, still neat, still dependable just like me. Frank Mercer, my boss, or I guess former boss now, sat with his back straight, one ankle resting casually over his knee like this was a performance he had rehearsed. Maybe it was. His office had changed since I'd last been invited in. New desk, new art. But the man behind it hadn't changed at all. Slick hair, perfect tie, that same faint cologne he always wore when he needed to feel powerful. His eyes never left the document in front of him. "We're moving in a new direction," he said, the words landing like glass tapping a tabletop, clean, cold, final. I blinked once. "I see," I replied, steady and flat, even as the air around me thinned. He wouldn't let me see the paper, just kept it angled toward himself, one hand resting over the signature line like he was shielding a secret, the kind of secret that slices from underneath. My eyes studied the faint shake in his fingers, almost unnoticeable. Maybe he wasn't as sure about this as he pretended to be. "Is there a reason?" I asked, careful, not challenging, just curious. Frank gave a hollow smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Restructuring. You know how it goes." I nodded slowly. "No, I didn't. Not like this." Behind him, the blinds were drawn halfway, letting in soft streaks of light that cut across the carpet like prison bars. The hum of the AC filled the room. Somewhere down the hall, a copier kicked to life. The ordinary sounds of a place I had once called a second home. I thought of the birthdays I'd helped organize, the late-night reports I'd finished alone in the break room, the times I showed up when no one else did. I stood up. Not fast, not slow, just with purpose. "Thank you," I said. "Not for the firing. For the clarity." Frank looked up for the first time, surprised. Maybe he expected shouting. Maybe he wanted it to feel justified. But I wasn't going to give him that. He gave a quick nod, already moving on, already reaching for the next file. I turned without another word. As I walked down the hallway, the silence gnawed at me. It was too still. The framed awards on the wall blurred past, one of them bearing my name from 5 years ago, Employee of the Year. My chest tightened. Faces peeked from cubicles, some curious, some avoiding eye contact. I gave a few nods, forced a smile at one of the interns. He looked confused. He should be. I'd been the constant here. Outside, the afternoon air cut sharper than I remembered. Fall creeping in early. I stood by my truck longer than I needed to, the keys resting in my palm. I watched the building, the glass glinting under the sun, just like it always did. Except now it felt like it was reflecting me out, not welcoming me in. That place had soaked up 20 years of my life. I had given it birthdays, weekends, early mornings, and missed dinners. For what? I sat on my porch that night in silence. The cold from the wooden steps soaked into my jeans, but I didn't move. I watched the neighborhood pass by, cars pulling into driveways, porch lights blinking on, a kid tossing a basketball against a garage door. Normalcy everywhere but inside me. I tried to pinpoint what I did wrong, where I failed, but I came up empty. No missed deadlines, no fights, no slip-ups. Frank's face returned to me, that polished voice, that refusal to make eye contact, that script he read from like it was a memo, not a man's livelihood. I remembered when his wife left. He broke down in my office, sobbing between cups of bitter coffee. I stayed with him long after closing, covered his tasks, didn't complain. When his son got picked up for stealing a car, he didn't know what to do. I drove him to court, sat beside him in silence while he cried again. I was there, always. 3 years ago, when I asked for a raise, not even a big one, he said things were tight. "Not right now," he said. "We're all making sacrifices." 2 weeks later, I saw the picture. Frank smiling next to his new boat, champagne in hand. That same fake smile. Something shifted inside me then. Not anger, something colder. A quiet clarity. This wasn't about performance. It wasn't about budgets. It was personal. Or worse, calculated. I said nothing to my brother, even though he'd ask. I didn't tell the guys from the warehouse. I just sat with it, watched, waited. Some nights, I parked across from the building, engine off. I watched the lights flicker on long past closing. I saw new faces through the windows, a shift in energy, a quiet rotation of chairs. Frank thought I was gone, but he didn't know I still had my contract, the one I signed 20 years ago, back when the company was still family-owned, before the investors came in, before the loyalty faded. Buried in that contract, something waited, something most would skip, but not me. Gerald Simmons, the old boss, had written it in. A clause meant to protect the lifers. Any employee with 20 years of continuous, uninterrupted service cannot be terminated without severance and full pension benefits unless in breach of conduct. No breach, no warnings, no write-ups. My record? Spotless. I made sure of that. Every year, every review. I played by the rules while Frank played favorites. Maybe he forgot the clause. Or maybe he thought I forgot. That I'd toss the contract like it didn't matter anymore. That I'd walk away without a word. But he was wrong. And I wasn't going to remind him. Not yet. He just opened a door I had locked shut for decades. I stayed quiet for a reason. Not because I was scared, but because silence makes people comfortable. And when people are comfortable, they get sloppy. The morning I returned my keycard, the lobby smelled the same, fresh coffee, ink from the copier, and that faint lemon cleaner they used on Fridays. I walked in wearing my usual flannel jacket, the one with the faded cuff from years of typing. I kept my expression still like stone. I didn't glance around, didn't look lost, just steady. One foot in front of the other, like always. Inside the office, the lights hummed low. Desks clicked with morning routines. But my desk, my old desk, was already claimed. A younger man sat in my chair, hunched slightly, tie too tight, hair stiff with gel. I paused just long enough to catch the nameplate. R. Mercer, of course. His nephew. He was laughing at something on his phone, unaware of the history in the drawer he now used. The drawer where I kept spare pens, a photo of my father, and the stapler I brought from home after the company cut extras. He didn't even look up. I turned away without a word, but in my chest, something locked into place. A gear catching a groove. I walked to the back closet where I had a few personal files stored, pretending to sort through manila folders while I watched through the glass reflection. Frank had moved quickly. Too quickly. That desk was warm before I even left it. I left slow, letting the weight of the office press against my back. I shook hands, smiled where I had to. Every smile felt like a pin pushed under the fingernail, but I didn't let it show. Outside, the sky was gray, low with winter clouds. I got into my truck, started the engine, and sat there for 5 minutes. No radio, no heat, just quiet. That night, I sat on the floor of my home office, legs crossed like I used to when I was a kid reading comics. I pulled out the filing cabinet with the duct-taped corner. The drawer stuck for a second before giving way with a groan. Inside, wrapped in a thin plastic sleeve, was the contract. The same paper I signed 20 years ago. Still crisp. Still legal. I ran my finger down the page until I found it. Clause 8b. Employees with 20 years of continuous service shall not be terminated without severance and full pension unless a breach of conduct is confirmed in writing. I whispered it to myself, memorized the exact wording, highlighted it in yellow. Then I pulled out my old hard drive, plugged it in, waited, green light, spin up, and then folders. Years of archived emails saved locally out of habit. Most people deleted old emails. I didn't. I believed in paper trails. Frank used to joke about it. You and your little backups, he'd say, grinning. I used to laugh with him. Not anymore. I searched his name. Hundreds of results. I scrolled back. Found one from 8 years ago. You're the one guy I can always count on. Frank. I kept reading. Praise after praise. Thank you for the extra hours. I owe you for handling the Henderson mess. Couldn't have done it without you. All signed. All time-stamped. I saved them in a new folder. Insurance. Then I found something else. An email dated 6 years ago. Subject: warehouse issue. Hey, let's not document the forklift fault just yet. We can fix it before anyone notices. Delay hurts the shipment. Keep this between us. F. At the time, I'd flagged it to HR quietly. They ignored it. Shipment went out. No one was hurt and I let it go. But now, it was leverage. And Frank had typed it himself. My hands didn't shake, but my pulse thudded slow and heavy in my ears. I leaned back in the chair, stared at the ceiling. A quiet smile touched my lips. I wasn't just going to defend myself, I was going to hold up a mirror. Let him see himself. I printed 3 emails. The clause. A 6-month timeline of my last projects and performance. Each page slid into a plain manila envelope. On the front, I wrote in pen, "Personal, to be opened only if legal issues arise." The next week, I returned to the building. No one questioned me. I told reception I left something in a drawer. The HR office door was open. New girl at the desk. I nodded politely, walked past her while she took a call, and slipped the envelope into the bottom drawer labeled private, not signed, not sealed with drama, just placed like a final chess piece before the clock runs out. I walked out the way I came, quietly, calm, with my hands in my coat pockets. I wasn't trying to ruin him. That wasn't the goal. But I wanted something simple, something clean. Truth. Truth has a way of rising no matter how deep it's buried. Like oil through water. Some debts collect interest while you're waiting. Weeks passed. On the surface, nothing moved. No calls, no letters, no headlines. But beneath it all, something had shifted. I could feel it. Like a fault line beneath my old desk. Quiet but ready to crack. I didn't pace. I didn't rant. I sat. I waited. I sharpened the edges of my plan in silence. Every evening, I'd sit by the window with a mug of coffee and watch the sun bleed out behind the pines. It wasn't peace. It was focus. The call came early one morning just after sunrise. Drew's name lit up my phone screen. I answered before the second ring. "They're fishing," he said, voice tight. "Legal team from your old place reached out. Asked me about some employment language. Sounded casual, but it wasn't." I leaned forward, setting the coffee mug down slowly. "Which part?" "The clause." "That clause," Drew said. "They're pretending it's outdated. Said it was a carryover from the founder era. But it's in your contract signed. Ink doesn't fade that fast." A long silence followed. I could hear Drew shuffling papers on the other end. "They're trying to cover it up," I murmured. "Yeah," he replied, quieter. "But it's too late. You've got the original. That puts you in the driver's seat." Frank had no idea what he'd triggered. That clause was never meant to be a shield. It was a net, and now it was closing around him. I didn't need to expose him. I just needed to stand still and let the truth catch up. 2 days later, I got word from Owen, one of the few men still at the company who hadn't turned into a statue when Frank walked by. He called from his truck during his lunch break, voice low and hurried. "Frank's a mess, man," Owen said. "They had some leadership meeting yesterday. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Sweat on his collar, eyes red. Kept glancing around like someone was about to pull the rug." "What about his nephew?" I asked. "Clueless. Sat in your old chair like a kid playing boss. They had to redo 3 reports because he didn't follow protocol. The team's talking. Not loud, but enough. That's all I needed." A week later, I got a call from a new voice. Char. Different name, younger tone. Trying too hard to sound friendly. "We're doing a routine review of your exit documentation," the woman said, careful with her words. "It seems there may have been an oversight on our part, and we'd like to offer you a severance package to ensure everything is handled fairly." I waited a beat, let the silence hum. "I appreciate the gesture," I said, my voice level. "But I'll only accept what's contractually owed. Nothing more, nothing less." Then I emailed them the scan, highlighted clause, signatures, timestamps. It landed like a hammer in their inbox. Days passed. Then a letter arrived, official, sealed, typed in the company's cold gray font. I opened it with steady hands, already knowing what it would say. 2 options: full reinstatement or full severance with pension. My choice. I didn't hesitate. I didn't need a desk to prove anything. I chose the latter. There was no press release, no apology posted online. But I knew, and Frank knew. He'd have to explain it all. How he forgot a line buried deep in a document he never bothered to read. How he ignored 2 decades of loyalty and replaced it with a warm body that couldn't even complete a quarterly budget. One decision, one blind swing, and now he was the one bleeding under the surface. They couldn't fire him outright, not yet. But word got around. He was pulled from key meetings. His authority clipped. His team reassigned. The nephew? Gone in a flash. 1 email and a cardboard box. I didn't celebrate. No part of me wanted to gloat. I just watched. I watched the quiet unraveling of a man who thought he was untouchable. I'd become invisible in his world. But now my absence echoed louder than my presence ever did. I remembered a line Frank once said to me in passing, years ago, after a tough week. Clean work is silent work. I doubt he remembered saying it. But I did. And now he was living it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make threats. I let the paper speak. Let time do the cutting. The same way he cut me quietly. He built the blade. I only let it drop. The envelope came on a Thursday. No knock, no fanfare. Just a quiet thump against the floorboards as it dropped through the mail slot. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the last sip of coffee cooling between my palms, when I heard it. I didn't rush to check. I already knew what it was. I picked it up slowly, turning the envelope in my hands like it might bite. It was heavier than I expected. Cream-colored, thick paper, no return address. Just my name, typed clean across the front. I slid it open with the edge of my old work badge, still tucked in my wallet, more out of habit than nostalgia, and slid the documents free. There it was. A check. The numbers looked like they belonged to someone else's life. The severance. The pension. The quiet settlement wrapped in silence. More than I expected, and exactly what I deserved. I didn't smile. I didn't breathe deep like a man finally free. I just folded the letter, slid it back in the envelope, and stared at it on the counter. For 20 years I had given everything, time, health, patience, and now it all ended with a folded piece of paper and a number with 2 commas in it. I cashed it the next morning. No questions asked. No celebratory lunch. I drove to the bank in my old Chevy truck, the kind with rust creeping under the paint and a rattle in the axle that only I could interpret. As the teller handed me the receipt, she gave me a polite smile and said, "Hope it brings you peace." I nodded but said nothing. Peace wasn't what I wanted. Not exactly. By Saturday, the mortgage was gone. 30 years wiped clean in 1 wire transfer. I used the rest to fix the truck suspension and finally replace the cracked windshield I'd ignored for months. And then I packed a small duffel, loaded it with flannel shirts and a thermos, and drove toward the mountains. No GPS, just instinct. The road wound through pine-covered hills, rising higher into silence. The air got colder with every mile, and I welcomed it. At the cabin, an old rental I hadn't visited in years, I lit a fire and sat on the porch in a heavy wool coat, watching the smoke twist into the dusk. There were no voices here, no deadlines, just wind and trees and the low creak of the rocking chair beneath me. I thought about Frank. I pictured him walking into that office Monday morning, reading the reports, fielding questions from corporate, trying to explain how he missed the clause, how he let loyalty become liability. I wondered if he avoided the mirror now, if he still straightened his tie with the same smug precision, or if his hands shook a little before every meeting. I didn't need to see it. I could feel it. In my mind, I imagined him sitting at his desk, that same fake calm glued to his face. But behind the eyes, panic, guilt, and maybe, for the first time in years, truth. He still had his title, his desk, his parking spot, but he didn't have his comfort anymore. That was gone, shattered by a single paragraph buried in a document he never bothered to read. And me? I had no desk, no office, just clean air and the sound of the river carving through stone 100 yards away. One afternoon, I hiked down to that river, boots crunching frostbitten leaves. I knelt at the bank and dipped my fingers into the water. It was ice cold. It stung. But I held them there anyway, watching the current swirl around my skin like it was trying to carry the years away. A squirrel darted across the rocks and vanished into the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk let out a single sharp cry. I sat back on a flat stone and exhaled. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't planning. I wasn't watching. I wasn't waiting. I was just still. I remembered the day Frank broke down in my office, the way his voice cracked when he said, "I don't know how to fix it." Back then, I told him he'd figure it out. That's what you say when you're the steady one, the fixer. But I realize now some people don't want to fix things. They just want someone else to carry the weight. Well, I'd put that weight down. I didn't need Frank to say sorry. Words are cheap. I didn't want him to make things right. That ship had sailed. What I needed was for him to know, deep down, every time he looked at the corner where my desk used to sit, that he didn't win. I framed the contract when I got back. Just the page with the clause. Black frame. Clean glass. It hangs by my door now, not like a trophy, but like a quiet oath. A reminder that silence isn't surrender. That patience can be a scalpel. I heard through a friend, quietly of course, that Frank had been reassigned. Not fired, but stripped of most of his decision-making. The nephew was gone. No farewell party. No handshake. Just out. Corporate restructured the chain of command, and Frank wasn't at the top anymore. He still walked the halls, but the bounce in his step had flattened. "He's not the same," they said. Good. I didn't gloat. I didn't reach out. I didn't need to. Justice had already pulled its chair to the table and settled in for a long, quiet meal. So no, I didn't ruin his life. I just gave it back to him without the mask. Let him sit in the hole he dug with his own hands. My hands are clean. My conscience is clear. And I sleep just fine. The man who thought he ended me never saw that I'd already won. Disclaimer: the story you just watched is fictional. It highlights themes of loyalty, exploitation, and the unexpected power of knowing your rights. By flipping the script on workplace injustice, it encourages viewers to value fairness, transparency, and the importance of reading the fine print. Its purpose is to raise awareness, inspire self-advocacy, and spark dialogue around ethical treatment in the workplace.